Hey there, night historians. Go ahead, dim the lights, fluff your pillow, and let's rewind time. Way back before that cruel, buzzing square on your nightstand was invented. Yes, tonight's story is about how people woke up before alarm clocks. Because once upon a time, humanity had to drag itself out of bed, without a single snooze button in sight, and somehow, they still managed to make it to work, feed the animals, milk the cows, and invade neighboring countries on time, which, honestly, feels kind of impressive considering I can't even get up when my phone screams like a banshee. So, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine the world before morning alerts and motivational playlists. It's darker, colder, and, believe it or not, a lot louder than you'd expect. Let's start where all bad mornings begin. In medieval Europe, sometime around the 1200s. Picture a small village wrapped in fog, a few stone cottages, a church tower, and the faint smell of damp hay. The world was quiet, except for the occasional rooster who took his job way too seriously. The rooster was nature's original alarm clock, and while it sounds quaint now, imagine being woken every single morning by a screaming bird that lived right outside your window. You couldn't hit snooze. You couldn't turn it off. You could only curse your bad luck and hope the stew tonight would involve chicken. But roosters weren't the only alarm system around. People relied on something we don't even think about much anymore. Light. The rising sun was the universal get-up, your late signal. Most homes didn't have curtains thick enough to block out daylight, so as soon as the first golden beam hit the wooden floor, the day had begun. Now, for the wealthy, things were a little more customized. They had something called a knocker-up. No, not that kind of knocking up. This was an actual profession. From about the 1600s all the way into the early 1900s, in Britain and parts of Ireland, professional human alarm clocks existed. They were people, usually older men or women, who'd go around early in the morning tapping on your window with a long stick or blowing through a straw to wake you up. They were literally paid to disturb your peace. Some even had schedules for entire streets. They'd walk through factory districts at dawn, tapping glass and shouting people's names. Imagine being jolted awake at 4:30 a.m. by an old woman rapping your window with a cane yelling, "Get up, Mr. Thompson. You'll miss your shift." And the best part? No one ever asked, who woke up the knocker-up? That's a mystery lost to time. But not everyone had the luxury of hiring human percussionists. For most people, it was still all about nature's cues and responsibility. If you lived on a farm, your morning started when the animals started complaining. Cows don't care about your 8 hours of sleep. Neither do horses or hungry chickens. So, farmers were basically doomed to early mornings for all of eternity. There was also the church bell. For centuries, churches controlled time. The ringing of the bell marked everything: prayer, work, meals, sleep. If you lived within earshot of a bell tower, congratulations. You had the loudest alarm clock in medieval history. And because there was no standardized timekeeping, everyone kind of guessed. When the bell rang, you got up. If the sun was high and you were still in bed, you were probably considered lazy, or sick, or dead. Now let's float over to the 14th and 15th centuries, when mechanical clocks began creeping into the scene. The earliest versions were massive, built into church towers powered by weights and gears the size of small children. They didn't have minute hands, and they definitely didn't have alarm functions. You couldn't exactly keep one on your bedside table unless your bedroom was the size of a cathedral. But these big town clocks changed everything. For the first time, entire communities started waking up in rhythm. When the bells struck 6, bakers began kneading. When it struck 7, markets opened. And by 8, you were supposed to already be pretending to enjoy your medieval job. These bells were so influential that people structured their whole existence around them. Morning bells weren't just about time, they were social control. Because if you didn't show up when the bell rang, everyone knew. And medieval gossip spread faster than the plague. Now, speaking of plague, let's glide into the Renaissance, a time when art bloomed, science advanced, and alarm clocks got weird. In the 15th century, clever Italian engineers started creating spring-driven clocks, smaller, portable, and for the first time capable of setting alarms. The earliest known mechanical alarm clock was built by a German inventor named Peter Henlein around the early 1500s. Henlein's design was elegant, intricate, and entirely too fancy for anyone not living in a palace. You could set it to ring a small bell at a chosen time, assuming you didn't accidentally overwind it and make it explode. Because yes, early clock springs were known to snap dramatically. Imagine waking up not to a gentle chime, but to your timepiece detonating beside your bed like a miniature cannonball. Still, people loved it. The Renaissance elite adored gadgets that proved how sophisticated and punctual they were. Having an alarm clock wasn't just practical. It was a symbol of control over time itself, which, ironically, no one really had. But while the upper classes were tinkering with gears and gilded bells, the rest of the world stayed loyal to the old methods: animals, sunlight, and sheer necessity. Because if you didn't get up on time, you didn't eat. Let's drift for a moment to Japan during the Edo period. They had their own version of natural timekeeping, temporal hours. Unlike Western fixed-hour systems, Japanese hours changed length depending on the season. Daytime was divided into 6 segments between sunrise and sunset, so an hour in summer was longer than in winter. This meant people woke up according to the sun's rhythm, not a mechanical standard. Farmers rose when it was light enough to see their fields. Samurai trained when the air was cool. Merchants opened their stalls when the streets began to hum. It was an elegant chaos. Time as a living, breathing thing. Let's float gently forward to the Industrial Revolution, the era that finally ruined sleep for everyone. Factories ran on schedules, trains ran on timetables, and workers had to show up exactly on time or risk being replaced. Suddenly, the idea of waking naturally went out the soot-covered window. This is when the knocker-up profession became essential. Towns like Manchester, Liverpool, and London were full of these human alarms. Some used long sticks. Others carried pea shooters to tap at higher windows, and a few used police-style rattles. Their job started as early as 3 a.m., long before sunrise. There are even accounts of knocker-ups hiring their own assistants to wake them up first so they could start their rounds. It's like a Matryoshka doll of misery, a chain of sleepy people waking other sleepy people, all because of capitalism. And of course, technology soon decided to make them obsolete. In 1787, a man named Levi Hutchins from New Hampshire invented what we might call the first personal alarm clock. It was a wooden box with gears inside, set to ring a bell at exactly 4 a.m. There was only one small flaw. It could only ring at 4 a.m. every single day, because Hutchins built it that way for his own schedule. It wasn't adjustable. You either lived by his routine, or didn't use it. Still, the idea caught on. By the mid-1800s, adjustable mechanical alarm clocks were being manufactured in Europe and America. They became household items, noisy, spring-loaded, and famously unreliable. They'd rattle, click, and clang like a tin can possessed by a demon. But at least they worked, most of the time. The arrival of the alarm clock changed not only mornings, but the meaning of time itself. Before that, time belonged to the world, to nature, the sun, and the seasons. After alarm clocks, time belonged to the clock, and you were just along for the ride. Now, imagine being in the 1800s, used to waking with the birds or bells, and suddenly hearing this new metallic shriek beside your head. Some people actually thought alarm clocks were dangerous. Newspapers warned they could cause nervous disorders or heart agitation, which, let's be honest, isn't entirely wrong. And while alarm clocks became symbols of progress, they also quietly marked the end of humanity's most ancient luxury, waking naturally. Before then, people's sleep patterns followed what's called segmented sleep. They didn't sleep for 8 hours straight like we try to today. They'd sleep for 4 or 5 hours, wake up for an hour or two, to pray, read, talk, or, well, do what couples do, and then fall asleep again until sunrise. It was normal, gentle, almost meditative. The alarm clock shattered that rhythm. Now you had one chance to rest, and one brutal noise to end it. And yet, even as technology evolved, people still kept their old instincts. We still wake up when it's light. We still curse when birds start singing too early. And deep down, we still feel that pull, that connection to a quieter time when mornings belong to the world, not a schedule. So next time your phone alarm drags you out of a dream, remember, it could be worse. You could have a rooster on your windowsill, a knocker-up shouting your name, or a 4 a.m. wooden clock that doesn't take no for an answer. And maybe, as you drift off again tonight, you'll think about a world that woke not with alarms, but with the sun. A world that rose slowly, gently, and on its own time. Let's float deeper into that world in Part 2, where we'll explore the people who literally built time, monks, mathematicians, and inventors obsessed with making mornings louder. Part 2. When the world woke up to roosters, bells, and unpaid humans. All right, so where were we? Ah, yes, the dark, pre-digital world, when people somehow managed to wake up without a phone screaming at them. How? Let's just say, with a whole lot of improvisation and human suffering. Now, after talking about the earliest methods, the sundial guessing game and water clock stripping away people's sanity, let's float over to medieval Europe. This was the age when timekeeping and religion became weirdly codependent. Every single thing revolved around church bells, because of course, they did. Bells, monks, and midnight wake-up calls. So, in medieval monasteries, the day was divided into strict prayer sessions called the canonical hours. These monks had to pray at exactly the right times: matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. It was like a holy spreadsheet of misery. And since the monks didn't exactly have Casio watches, they relied on a designated bell ringer, someone whose sole job was to wake up before everyone else, climb up the tower, and ring the bell to drag the others from sleep into piety. You might think, well, at least it's peaceful, all that chanting, candlelight, serenity. No, Imagine being jolted awake by an iron bell echoing through stone halls at 3 a.m. every night for the rest of your life. It was less peaceful meditation and more Catholic insomnia. Still, this system worked for centuries. People in surrounding towns would also use the monastery bells as their version of an alarm. A 5 a.m. bell meant get to work. The noon bell meant stop pretending to work. And the evening bell meant go home before you freeze to death. Cock-a-doodle. Doom. Of course, not everyone lived near a church. Enter the rooster, nature's most annoying but dependable alarm clock. Every morning, at the crack of dawn, this feathery tyrant would start screaming like it was auditioning for an opera no one asked for. The rooster didn't care if it was raining, if you were hungover, or if you'd just had a baby. Sunrise meant screaming. Peasants loved it. Sort of. It was free, accurate-ish, and required zero maintenance, unless you counted the occasional stew when things got too loud. The rooster was such a reliable time symbol that it became a sacred icon of mourning. Even the Bible used it. Peter's denial of Jesus, marked by the rooster's crow, is basically the world's first recorded alarm clock moment. But again, it only worked if you had a rooster. City folks, they needed something else. The knockers, nappers, and human alarm clocks. And this is where things get oddly brilliant. Let's drift over to industrial Britain around the 18th and 19th centuries, when waking up on time actually started to matter. Factories ran on shifts, not vibes. If you were late, you got fired. And if you got fired, well, you starved. So being on time was suddenly a life-or-death matter. But alarm clocks were expensive, a luxury for the middle class. So, working-class folks invented a job, the knocker-upper. Yes, that was the real name. And yes, it means exactly what it sounds like. A knocker-upper was a human alarm clock. They'd walk through neighborhoods in the dark, armed with long sticks or pea shooters, and tap, or shoot peas at, the windows of sleeping workers to wake them up. Imagine trying to sleep while someone outside your window is poking it every morning at 4:30 a.m., like a human version of snooze, except there's no way to stop them unless you pay them not to come. These people took their job seriously. Some even memorized hundreds of wake-up times for different clients, tapping each window in the right order, down to the minute. In northern England and Ireland, they became beloved local figures. They'd often be old women, widows, or retired miners, people who needed the extra income and had nothing better to do at dawn. And to make sure they didn't oversleep, the knocker-uppers often hired other knocker-uppers to wake them up first. An endless chain of exhaustion. When time got mechanical and pretentious. Eventually, of course, the Industrial Revolution brought better clocks. Spring-driven models became cheaper, and by the late 19th century, personal alarm clocks were finally affordable. But for a while, people didn't trust them. Early alarm clocks were temperamental. They ticked too loudly, jammed easily, or went off at the wrong time. Picture a Victorian factory worker glaring at a sputtering brass clock, thinking, "I paid a week's wages for this?" Some people even kept both, an alarm clock and their friendly neighborhood knocker-upper, just in case the machine failed. Because, let's face it, humans are still like that today. We don't trust one alarm. We set 5. And we still oversleep. Other odd waking methods. Across different parts of the world, people came up with their own weird solutions. In Japan, some towns used drums instead of bells. massive wooden taiko drums that signaled dawn. It sounded majestic, unless you were trying to sleep in. In rural China, roosters and gongs ruled the morning, while some Buddhist temples used rhythmic wooden blocks to mark the hours of meditation. In the Middle East, early morning prayer calls, adhan, acted as a community-wide wake-up system, an elegant blend of faith and timekeeping. But the strangest method? In parts of Europe, especially in the Alps, some people would simply rely on their cows. Yep, the morning mooing of livestock returning from pasture or being milked was the village's "it's time to get up" cue. No batteries required. Let's float back to England for a moment. By the late 1800s, cities were buzzing with factory smoke, train whistles, and chiming clocks, all competing for the title of most annoying wake-up sound. And that's when the knocker-upper slowly went extinct, replaced by the mass-produced mechanical alarm clock. Ironically, these new gadgets were often modeled after the church bells that started it all, little metal hammers striking twin bells on top, shrieking like a sanctified demon until you threw it against a wall. The human race had done it. We'd finally created a machine that could annoy us without another person's help. But before we move into the 20th century, where alarm clocks became an everyday household curse, let's pause here, because the story of waking up is more than just about time. It's about control. For centuries, people rose with nature, then religion, then industry, and now, electricity. Each step brought us closer to the illusion of control over our days, but also farther from the natural rhythm our ancestors used to follow. In the next part, we'll drift into that electric age. The rise of the ticking clock on every bedside table, the dawn of workplace punctuality, and the birth of the modern anxiety called being late. But for now, you can rest. Or, set an alarm, just in case.
The office awakens. As the 20th century marched on, cities grew, factories evolved, and the world of work shifted from fields and furnaces to desks and deadlines. The 1920s brought the rise of the office worker, the man in the grey suit, the typist in the corner, the manager staring at a wall clock like it was God himself. And guess what came along for the ride? The morning routine, alarm, coffee, commute, clock in. Repeat until retirement or death, whichever came first. Even literature from that time captured it. Kafka's. The Metamorphosis opens with a man waking up late to his alarm and immediately panicking about work before realizing he's turned into an insect. A metaphor, maybe, for how we all feel inside before caffeine. The alarm clock had become the mechanical heart of modern life, that first jolt reminding you that time doesn't care how you feel. The war against oversleeping World War II accelerated everything. Military precision and timekeeping became national obsessions. Every soldier had to wake up, move, and function according to the clock. The alarm wasn't just a household gadget anymore. It was part of a culture of coordination. After the war, alarm clocks became smaller, cheaper, and even cuter. Plastic replaced brass. The ticking got softer. The dials became luminous. Now, the alarm clock didn't just sit on your nightstand. It matched your decor. The 1950s especially turned timekeeping into a lifestyle. Ads promised a brighter morning and the cheerful chime of responsibility. The irony: the clocks looked cheerful, but the people buying them looked exhausted. And by the 1960s, the ticking started to fade, replaced by the hum of electricity. Enter the electric age. Electric clocks were the sleek modern upgrade. No winding, no ticking, just steady humming precision. These things didn't even need you to remember anything. Plug it in, set the time, and boom, you were synced to the grid. They were perfect for the new, wired world. Electric alarm clocks also introduced a new, terrifying sound. The buzz. That harsh, vibrating, soul-rattling tone that could wake the dead or cause mild cardiac events. This was the sound of progress, literally. Because now, time wasn't just something humans managed. It was something machines controlled. And when electricity failed, society panicked. Power outages led to millions of people waking up late, missing buses, missing shifts, missing life. We had become so dependent on our electric gods of punctuality that when the current stopped, so did we. The snooze button revolution. But then, in 1956, something magical and deeply human happened. A man named Lew Wallace, no relation to the Ben-Hur author, sadly, invented the snooze button. It was a quiet rebellion against the tyranny of the clock. For the first time, you could literally negotiate with time. "Give me 9 more minutes," you'd whisper. "I'll deal with reality later." It was humanity's ultimate compromise, a truce between sleep and productivity. And of course, people abused it instantly. Studies later showed that hitting snooze repeatedly doesn't help you rest more. It just makes you groggier. But let's be honest, it also feels amazing. That moment when you know you should get up, but don't, that's pure luxury. The 1980s, digital dreams and red numbers. By the 1980s, analog clocks were fading out. The world turned digital, red LED numbers glowing in the dark, like the eyes of time itself staring you down. These clocks were silent until they weren't. Then they'd erupt in that infamous beep, 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 the most joyless sound ever created. It didn't matter where you lived, a studio apartment, a dorm room, a suburban house. The morning alarm became a universal experience. That same shrill tone, that same half-asleep slap at the snooze button, that same sigh of regret. And what's funny is, as clocks got better, people got worse at waking up. Maybe it's because now, time was everywhere. On microwaves, on watches, on TV screens. There was no escaping it. The constant awareness of minutes and seconds didn't make us more punctual. It just made us more anxious. We had invented something extraordinary, a device that could command our mornings, and we used it to make ourselves miserable. From necessity to nuisance. By the late 20th century, the alarm clock was so ordinary, so expected, that people stopped even noticing it. But think about it. This little device completely rewired human behavior. It changed when we woke, how we worked, and how we felt about time itself. It was the heartbeat of modern society, and the thing that every morning reminded us that freedom had a limit. Still, we tried to make peace with it. Designers made gentle wake-up models. Some played soft music. Others simulated sunrise. The idea was to make waking up less terrible. But we all know what happened next. The smartphone entered the chat. Let's stop here for a second. Take a deep breath, stretch, maybe even look at your own alarm app sitting on that little glowing rectangle next to your bed. In part 4, we'll drift into the final era, the one we're living through right now, where alarms aren't just clocks, but apps, playlists, and vibrations, where sleep tracking meets insomnia, and where the idea of rest has become just another item on the productivity checklist. It's the era of constant awareness, and it's kind of exhausting. Part 3, when time got loud, the rise of the alarm clock, and the death of sleeping in. Hey again, still awake? Or maybe half asleep, just floating there with one eye open? perfect, because that's exactly where our story belongs now. The in-between space where the modern world started to hum, tick, and buzz its way into everyone's bedrooms. We're now entering the 20th century, a place where everything suddenly needed to be on time. Factories, trains, schools, offices. The human day was no longer measured by sunlight or church bells. It was measured by a device sitting 2 feet from your head, waiting to scream. And the funny part, we invented it ourselves. From fancy gadget to household menace. At the turn of the 1900s, alarm clocks were still considered a luxury, a kind of respectable gift for responsible adults. Look at you, owning punctuality basically. But as mass production kicked in, cheap alarm clocks started flooding the market. Companies like Westclocks in the US or Smiths in the UK began cranking out metal clocks with twin bells on top, designed specifically to wake you up whether you wanted it or not. They had charming names too. The Big Ben, the Screecher, the Never Late. Because if you can't sell peace, sell panic. And people loved them. Sort of. The alarm clock quickly became a symbol of modern efficiency. It said, I have places to be. It also said, I hate mornings, but I'm pretending to be a functioning adult. The sound of progress and regret. If you've ever heard one of those old metal alarm clocks ring, you know the sound. A violent metallic rattle that makes your soul evacuate your body for a second. Now imagine that sound as your daily wake-up call. Every morning, in a small wooden house with thin walls, shared by 5 other people. That was industrial life. The early 1900s were all about discipline and time control. Employers didn't just expect punctuality, they demanded it. Being late meant being replaced, and in cities where factory shifts started at 5 a.m., oversleeping was a small tragedy. There was even a moral tone to it. Early to bed and early to rise wasn't just a proverb, it was practically propaganda. Waking up early meant virtue, sleeping in meant laziness. You weren't just late, you were morally questionable. And so the alarm clock wasn't just a tool. It was a tiny, judgmental machine sitting beside your bed, reminding you that society expected better. Part 4. The digital wake-up. How phones turned sleep into a performance. Hey again, you're still here, which means you either haven't fallen asleep yet, or you're trapped under your blanket, too cozy to move. Either way, you're in the perfect place, because we're now floating into the age where waking up stopped being just a thing we did and started becoming something we tracked. Welcome to the digital era, the one where your alarm clock isn't just beside your bed. It is your bed's best friend, or worst enemy. When the clock moved into your pocket. Let's rewind to the late 1990s. Humanity was buzzing with optimism, coffee, and dial-up internet. Everything was going digital, even time. The humble alarm clock, once a clunky metal creature on your nightstand, started to shrink. First came digital LED clocks, glowing red numbers whispering, "It's later than you think." Then, as mobile phones appeared, something miraculous and kind of terrible happened. The clock moved into your hand. Suddenly, everyone carried time with them. Everywhere. The phone was no longer just for calling. It became your personal assistant, calendar, flashlight, and yes, your alarm clock. At first, it felt futuristic. Why have a separate alarm when your shiny new Nokia could do it all? It even had customizable tones. Remember those digital chirps and polyphonic melodies that sounded like a robot trying to sing? We thought we'd reached the peak of convenience, but what we'd actually done was invite time itself into our brains 24/7. When morning became a notification. By the mid-2000s, smartphones had arrived, and waking up officially lost its peace. No more gentle chirping birds or ticking brass clocks. Now, Your morning began with pinging. The alarm tone bled straight into your notifications. Texts, emails, reminders, the entire internet waiting behind your lock screen. You didn't just wake up, you logged in. That small, glowing rectangle became both your lullaby and your drill sergeant. It told you when to sleep, when to wake, and, just to spice things up, when you'd overslept because your phone updated overnight and turned your alarm off. Of course, we didn't question it. It was efficient. It was smart. It was addictive. We replaced bedside clocks with devices that not only woke us up, but also gave us insomnia. And that's when the irony reached its peak. Sleep apps and the myth of optimized rest. Once we handed our mornings to technology, the next step was obvious. Let's hand it our nights too. Enter sleep tracking apps. Suddenly, sleeping became something to monitor. We downloaded apps that listened to us breathe, tracked our movements, and gave us a score the next morning, as if our dreams were competing in the Olympics. Last night's sleep quality, 73%. What are we supposed to do with that information? Apologize to our pillow? And yet, we loved it. The idea that data could fix something as ancient and mysterious as rest made us feel powerful and slightly neurotic. Smartwatches joined the game. They started vibrating softly to wake us at the optimal moment based on our sleep cycles. Which sounds cool until you realize it's 4:37 a.m. and your wrist is buzzing like it's having a nervous breakdown. We'd entered an era where technology wasn't just waking us, it was judging us for how we slept. The revenge of the blue light. Then came another problem we lovingly ignored. Blue light. Phones, tablets, laptops. All these glowing rectangles emitted light that told our brains, hey, it's still daytime. So even when we lay down at midnight, our minds refused to believe it. We scrolled through timelines, watched videos, checked alarms one last time, and suddenly it was 2 a.m. and we were Googling, why am I still awake? It's a bit tragic, really. The same device we use to wake up is the one keeping us from falling asleep. Of course, app developers saw a marketing opportunity. Blue light filters, sleep mode, do not disturb. All these features were designed to protect us from the very machines selling them. It's like inventing cigarettes and then selling the filters as health products. Waking up to everything. All the time. In the digital era, the biggest change wasn't how we woke up. It was what we woke up to. In the old days, you'd open your eyes to sunlight or birds, or the sound of your neighbor's rooster screaming his lungs out. Now, we wake up to chaos. News alerts, unread messages, missed calls, weather warnings, existential dread. The first thing most people touch in the morning isn't their partner, or their blanket, or even their coffee mug. It's their phone. We check time, we check messages, we check how bad the world got overnight, all before we even stand up. And here's the weirdest part. We call that productivity. We built a system where rest is no longer rest. It's just a pause in the cycle of notifications. Sleep became another thing to optimize, measure, and guilt trip ourselves about. The return of gentle alarms. Of course, not everyone liked that. So, naturally, the market responded by making more technology, smart alarms that simulate sunrise, mindful wake-ups with soft nature sounds, AI-generated morning affirmations that tell you in a soothing voice that you're doing great, even if you've slept 4 hours. We came full circle, from monks ringing bells in stone towers to apps playing bird sounds in minimalist bedrooms. The only difference is that the monks didn't charge a subscription fee. Still, there's something poetic about it. After centuries of being jolted awake by bells, roosters, and buzzing clocks, we seem to be craving gentleness again. We want the light, the rhythm, the peace we once had, before time became a business. The global alarm. There's also something global now about waking up. Think about it. Billions of people across every time zone being woken by their phones at slightly different moments. It's like a wave rolling across the planet every morning. The collective hum of alarms, a low vibration of civilization shaking itself awake. And somewhere out there, a server is counting it all. Because yes, your wake-up time is probably stored somewhere. The digital age doesn't just wake us, it records us. Time used to be personal, now it's data. So here we are, in a world that never really sleeps and never truly wakes. We've gained precision, but lost patience. We know the exact minute we open our eyes, but not necessarily why. In the next part, part 5, we'll drift into something quieter, the psychology of waking. Why alarms make us anxious, why oversleeping feels like failure, and why, deep down, we still dream of the days when the sun, not a screen, told us it was morning. Because at this point, we've mastered timekeeping, but not time itself. The cult of morning routines. Then there's the modern religion of morning routines. You've probably seen them, the YouTube videos and self-help gurus who wake up at 4 a.m., drink something green, meditate on a mountain, and claim that's why they're millionaires. But let's be honest. Most of us wake up, stare at our phones for 20 minutes, and wonder if coffee counts as breakfast. Still, this obsession with mastering mornings has turned waking up into a public performance. It's not enough to simply open your eyes. You have to open them the right way. Cold showers, journaling, gratitude lists, breath work, yoga, emails. It's exhausting before the day even begins. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that waking up used to be simple. You opened your eyes, stretched, maybe cursed the rooster, and carried on. Now, it's an Olympic event. The fear of time itself. But beneath all this, the alarms, the apps, the routines, there's something deeper. We're afraid of time. We treat it like a predator, something chasing us, and waking up feels like the moment it catches us again. You can almost feel it. That split second after the alarm goes off, when your brain reboots and remembers everything you have to do today. Emails, bills, responsibilities, the entire weight of adulthood. It's no wonder so many people hit snooze. That small act of defiance, those extra 9 minutes, is our quiet rebellion against time's tyranny. It says, I know the world's waiting, but not yet. Oversleeping, sin or survival. Here's something no one admits. Sometimes oversleeping isn't laziness, it's survival. Your body doesn't lie. If you're sleeping through alarms, you're probably exhausted, physically, emotionally, or both. But our world doesn't like that truth. We punish rest, we glorify burnout. Think about how often people brag about running on 4 hours of sleep, as if exhaustion were a status symbol. Look at me, I'm dying, but I'm productive. Meanwhile, the human brain hasn't evolved that fast. It still wants 8 hours, minimum. It still follows circadian rhythms older than civilization itself. We're basically cavemen trying to live by Google Calendar. The endless race to be on time. And maybe that's the heart of the issue. We don't want to wake up rested. We want to wake up ready. Ready for deadlines. Ready for notifications. Ready to perform. But that readiness never ends. It's a treadmill disguised as a morning routine. Even when you win, when you get up early, drink your coffee, check off your to-do list, there's still that faint whisper. You could have done more. Because time doesn't stop, and neither do we. The lost rhythm. Before clocks ruled us, humans lived by light. Sunrise meant waking. Sunset meant rest. It wasn't perfect. Winter mornings were brutal. Summer nights were short. But it was organic. Now we live by numbers instead of nature. Our sleep is scheduled, not felt. Our wake-ups are mechanical, not natural. And deep down, maybe that's why we're always tired. Not because we don't sleep enough, but because we've forgotten how to rest. So maybe the question isn't, how do we wake up better? Maybe it's, what are we waking up for? In the next and final part, part 6, the quiet return, remembering how to wake like humans again, will drift into something softer, a reflection on slowing down, on finding calm in a world that runs on noise. We'll step away from alarms, apps, and guilt, and listen to the rhythm that's still hiding underneath it all. Because time might control our clocks, but it doesn't have to control our mornings. Part 5. The anxiety of time. Why we fear. Oversleeping. Hey again. Still here? Nice. That probably means you're relaxed enough to keep floating through this quiet little journey about time, sleep, and all the ways humans accidentally turned rest into a competition. Because that's where we are now, the era of sleep anxiety, where the act of not being awake somehow feels wrong. The guilt of sleeping in. Let's start with a familiar scene. It's a Sunday morning. You wake up, stretch, and glance at your phone. The clock says 10:42 a.m. And immediately your brain goes, oh no, I've wasted half the day. Half the day doing what exactly? Recovering from existence? But the guilt kicks in anyway. That's modern conditioning. For centuries, sleep was just sleep. A natural rhythm, not a moral statement. But now, thanks to productivity culture, waking up early has become a virtue signal. Successful people wake up at 5 a.m. Winners don't hit snooze. Your future depends on what you do before sunrise. Calm down, Steve from LinkedIn. Some of us are just trying to get 8 hours without an existential crisis. It's funny, the more technology we invent to manage time, the more anxious we become about losing it. When time became a currency. In medieval life, time was measured in bells, prayers, and seasons. It flowed. It wasn't owned. Now it's transactional. We sell our time to employers, trade it for convenience, and measure our worth by how efficiently we spend it. Every minute is accounted for, like money. Even our rest is budgeted. And the alarm clock, that tiny device on your nightstand, is basically the bank manager reminding you that you're behind on your payments. We've turned the most natural thing in the world, sleeping, into a thing to justify. It's wild, really. We brag about being tired. We compete over who's more burnt out. We call exhaustion dedication. And in all that noise, the simple pleasure of waking up slowly, of letting your mind wander in that dreamy morning fog, became a lost art. The climb inside the mind. You know what's worse than an alarm clock? The mental one. That 3 a.m. wake-up when your brain suddenly decides to run a full PowerPoint presentation of everything you've ever done wrong. Or that faint hum of anxiety right before bed whispering, you have to sleep now, or you'll ruin tomorrow. Congratulations, you're now stressed about resting. Psychologists actually have a term for this: sleep performance anxiety. It's when trying to sleep well makes you sleep worse. You start overthinking your own exhaustion, like a meta loop of misery. And what's usually to blame? Time awareness. The moment you check the clock mid-insomnia, game over. You've just entered math panic mode. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 6 hours. Okay, now it's 5.5. That's not resting. That's doing arithmetic in the dark. Part 6. The quiet return. Remembering how to wake like humans again. Hey again, sleepy traveller. If you've made it this far, through monks, bells, industrial buzzers, and the psychological roller coaster of time itself, congratulations. You've just survived several thousand years of alarm history. Now, let's finally slow down. Because this last part isn't really about clocks anymore. It's about waking. The kind that doesn't come with panic or pressure. The kind that just happens. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's float back to where all this began. Before schedules, before alarms, before we started setting timers for our dreams. Before the noise. Imagine a time when mornings had no sound but nature's. No phone vibration, no buzzing clock. Just the quiet rhythm of the world stretching awake. A slow bloom of light filtering through thatched windows or tent cloth. Birds muttering half-heartedly in trees. Humans used to wake with the light, not against it. They didn't decide to wake up. Their bodies simply knew when dawn arrived. The circadian rhythm wasn't a biohack. It was just life. And in that sense, waking up wasn't a moment. It was a process. A gradual drift from dreams to daylight. Now compare that to today. Alarms, screens, schedules, all screaming go before your soul has even rebooted. We don't wake up anymore, we start up. At the gentle rebellion. But what if we didn't? What if waking up could be quiet again, a soft refusal to rush? It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to move to the woods or throw your phone in a lake. It can start small, like not checking messages the moment your eyes open, or sitting for 30 seconds and just existing. No goals, no affirmations, no grind, just the simple awareness that, yes, you're still here. You made it through another night. Because in a world obsessed with what's next, that's kind of revolutionary. The rhythm, beneath the routine. The truth is, your body still remembers how to do this. No matter how modern your life gets, the ancient rhythm hasn't left. It's there in your pulse, your breath, your hormones quietly sinking to the light. Science calls it the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your brain's master clock. But before science gave it a name, people just called it morning. That's the beautiful part. Beneath the notifications, the spreadsheets, the deadlines, your body is still whispering, I know how to wake. You just have to let it. Letting go of productive. We've spent so much time trying to optimize mornings that we forgot to enjoy them. Wake up early, meditate, hydrate, journal, hustle. It's like we turned dawn into a corporate meeting. But here's the secret no one tells you. You don't have to win the morning. You can just have it. You can wake up, yawn, stare out the window for 5 minutes, and let your mind wander. Not because it's mindfulness, but because it's peace. No algorithm can measure that. No productivity app can improve it. It's the one space in your day that still belongs to you, if you let it. Time without edges. There's something beautiful about the way ancient people thought of time. Not as a line, but as a circle. The day began, then ended, only to begin again. There was no countdown, no running out, just rhythm. We, on the other hand, treat time like a trap, a finite resource. Every tick of the clock is a reminder that something is slipping away. But maybe it isn't. Maybe every second that passes is simply another wave in an endless sea. Coming, going, returning. You wake, you rest, you wake again. Not because you must, but because that's the heartbeat of existence. Waking as an art form. There's a quiet kind of beauty in a slow morning. The way the light hits your room at just the right angle. The faint smell of coffee or rain. The half-dreams that linger a few seconds before fading. If you listen closely, there's rhythm in it, like a soft metronome the universe uses to keep time. That's what waking used to be. Not an interruption, but an invitation. To rejoin the world, to exist again, and honestly, that's more profound than any alarm tone ever made. The last alarm. Someday, all the clocks will stop, the batteries will die, the power will fade, and the concept of running late will mean nothing. What will be left? Probably the same thing that's been there since the beginning, the quiet urge to open your eyes when the light returns. Because you can silence every device, but you can't silence the sunrise. It always finds you, gently, relentlessly, beautifully. So, tonight, as you drift off, maybe you'll think about monks and bells, or industrial whistles, or that one poor guy whose job was to knock on windows with a stick. But maybe, just maybe, you'll also think about your own morning and how you might reclaim it. Not with discipline or routine, but with ease. Let the light find you. Let your body decide when it's time. And when you wake, not because of an alarm, but because you're ready, just take one deep breath and smile at the quiet. That's the real luxury. That's what we've been chasing all along. End of script. How people used to wake up before alarm clocks. Approximate total runtime, 1.5 hours of calm narration.